Even as his star rose, there was an early example of his ambition. He commissioned a documentary about himself. It was called Power, made by Igor Shadkan.
Но у Путина была определенная цель.
Putin had an agenda. He wanted to admit that he had been a KGB agent in foreign reconnaissance.
Но он занимался внешней разведкой.
После окончания университета мне было предложено прийти на работу в органы Комитета государственной безопасности.
For Putin, it was an effective way to out himself as a former member of the reviled KGB. But for Mayor Sobchak, Putin's past would prove useful. After all, he was running a city with a notorious criminal history, and according to prominent political analyst Stanislav Belkovsky, he needed someone who could work in its shadows.
St. Petersburg called the bandit capital of Russia, gangster capital of Russia at that moment. And the mayor's office should communicate to those groupings some way. But of course, Anatoly Sobchak could not be involved in such contacts. And it was Vladimir Putin who was in charge.
Когда я, кстати говоря, пришел к нему на съемку, то полная приемная его.
When I arrived for the shoot, his entire lobby was full of foreigners. This included Finnish, Germans, and there was some agreement they were all coming to. Now the agreement for the most part was about food aid for St. Petersburg.
Putin had his work cut out for him. The collapse of the Soviet Union brought terrible food shortages to St. Petersburg. The agricultural system was in chaos, and there was little foreign currency to buy food from abroad. To fill the shelves, a program was devised. Companies would be allocated raw materials like oil and minerals to be sold abroad, and the money was then used to buy food. In his film, the deputy mayor assured hungry residents food was on its way.
Масло животного 2,2 тысяч тонн, молока сухого 2000 тонн. Значит, это фактически перекрывает все наши потребности. Но это впечатляет, я могу сказать откровенно, так?
The trouble was, most of the promised food never arrived. Despair turned to anger, and then protests. A city councilor named Marina Salye was charged with investigating what had happened. Salye would eventually leave politics, disillusioned, and retreat to the countryside. But she kept all her documents. She says they show what went wrong in St. Petersburg in the 90s and who she believes was to blame.
So, without going into all the details, I'll tell you from this document signed by Putin. All 124 million disappeared without a trace. Without a trace. Because from this list of materials that I have listed, not a single gram of food came.
And what happened was fly-by-night companies were set up. Many of his friends who are still around today were behind those companies. The goods went out, and incomplete or no shipments came back. So millions were made just in that episode alone.
In the end, the St. Petersburg City Council approved Salye's recommendation to turn the case over to the prosecutors.
We concluded that Putin and his assistant should be fired.
Mrs. Sobchak dismisses the investigation as a political vendetta against her husband.
I understand that all of the investigations, quote-unquote, that were being undertaken by the deputies were complete rubbish. It was just a way to somehow influence my husband to get rid of Putin.
But Sobchak protected his deputy. The case of the missing food would never be prosecuted. And Putin would deny the charges and blamed the companies and other bureaucrats.